Welcome to the Unshakable Hope podcast, where real life intersects redeeming love. I'm Kelly Hall, and this is where we wrestle through faith questions such as how do I trust God's heart when his ways and delays are breaking mine? We'll hear from people just like you and me who have experienced God's faithfulness when life didn't unfold as they expected. My prayer is that God would renew our hope in his word and his love through these conversations. Hey guys, welcome to the show. I just returned from speaking at a women's retreat in Woodland Park, Colorado, where I had such a powerful time opening the Bible with these beautiful women who blessed me tremendously. I took a few weeks off from releasing the podcast as I finished preparing this brand new series of 3 teaching sessions. They're just packed full of biblical truth and inspirational stories that showcase God's faithfulness and include lessons that I've learned about how to become a hope hunter when we're in long seasons of waiting on the Lord. I am still basking in the glow of what a beautiful time that was. If you're looking for a speaker for a women's event, I'd sincerely love to have a conversation with you. There's nothing I love more than opening up the Bible in person with women at these events. You can connect with me through my website, kellyhall.org, and also I'll put some information in the show notes. Now, let me tell you about my guest today. Lauren Hostetler is a full-time nurse and also the owner and founder of Moe Mountains, a business that takes women on backpacking trips where they experience healing, rest, and community in the beauty of God's creation. But before either of these things were, Lauren walked through the profound and sudden loss of her precious mom, who was not only her best friend, but was also her biggest cheerleader. Today, you're going to hear the tender ways God provided for her initially, and then how he rescued her after 3 years of anger and separation from him. Lauren, I am so glad you're here today. I really want to tell you how thankful I am that you're willing to share this tender story with my audience.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Kelly. I'm excited. I'm excited for all the things we're going to talk about.
Me too. I'm just ready to let it all download for everybody. So, why don't you start by telling us about your family and then we'll move on and get into some deeper places.
Yeah. So I was born and raised in Ohio. It was a lovely childhood, like nothing to complain about. It was very safe. I lived in the country. Both sides, extended family were close. I had some good friends. I grew up in the church. My parents were both believers. I'm the oldest of 3 brothers, and it was just as close to a picture perfect family as you could get, I think, in my opinion. My dad was a speech pathologist. My mom stayed at home and she homeschooled all 4 of us. And we were very tight. So nothing really to talk about or anything big to share growing up until I was in college. I was between my junior and senior year in nursing school. I was working at a summer camp in Montana at the time. I got a phone call one night from my dad, and he just told me something really horrible has happened. Mom died. So I was just like, in a couple seconds, my life turned upside down and it took a direction that I was not at all expecting. She, come to find out, was walking on our road, which she has done my entire childhood. We live in the country. And a teenage kid was drunk and high and he hit her and killed her instantly. Next morning, I was back on a plane headed back to Ohio and was handed a bunch of emotions and circumstances that were not welcome and that I had to work out and grapple with for the next handful of years. That's just an overview of how
Yeah.
my life has taken a turn. And yeah.
Oh, such a significant loss. I cannot imagine receiving that news so suddenly in the middle of just a summer camp day. It's so difficult. Before we talk about that more, can you tell us where you live?
Yeah. So I live now in very close to Bozeman, Montana, which if you've
Okay.
ever watched Yellowstone, I've just always loved the mountains. My dad would take us out west on family vacations. So about 7 years ago, I moved to Bozeman, Montana. And like I mentioned, I'm a nurse, and there's one hospital in Bozeman. And so I was like, if I get a job there, I'm moving. And I got a job, packed up everything. I didn't know very many people and just moved here. And I love it. Other than Ohio, it is the only other place that has felt like home. I ended up living here about a year, and then I met my husband at church. And I always said I wasn't gonna meet somebody at church in small group, like like, that's so cliche, but never say never, it happened. And so I met him, and we have been married this summer will be 4 years. No kids, we've got 2 dogs that are our fur babies,
Mm.
and I work as a nurse here still.
Okay, wonderful. I know what you mean about meeting your husband. My husband and I met in a Bible study at a church in a small group. And he always tells people we met in a bar. Nothing wrong with meeting in a bar, but he just thought that was a
So
much more interesting story than the one we have.
yeah, I know, I was always like, "I'm never gonna do that, that's so boring." But here we are,
Here you are.
and it's a really good place to meet somebody, so,
Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah.
Okay, now I know you and your mom had a wonderful relationship. So I'd love for you to tell us about her.
Yes. Oh, she was so special. One memory that I'll always have is at her funeral, we opened it up to everyone who was there, which, if I remember right, not everybody even had a seat. There was that many people there that she had an impact on. And we were just like, if you have a memory or something that you want to share about her name was Maureen, about Maureen, then go ahead. And we ended up having to stop people because it was going a little too long. And she had such a servant's heart and homeschooling us. She, of course, she loved her children. And so we spent a lot of time with my mom. And one thing I really remember about her is when she saw that we had an interest in something or a passion in something, she made sure that we could explore that. So, for example, one day I was like, Mom, I really want to get into horses. Didn't have horses. We didn't even have a dog. And I was like, I want to learn how to ride and be a horse person. And she was like, well, we're not buying a horse. And so let's go be creative and find some way for you to figure out if this is what you like. And so she told me if I found a barn, she would drive me there to clean stalls and all of that. And so I did. I found a barn. I walked in, this little like 12-year-old kid and I was like, "Hey, if I clean your stalls, will you teach me how to ride a horse?" And they were like, "Sure." I did that through until I graduated high school. She drove me there 2 days a week to clean stalls and ride, and then she picked me up, and I got into showing horses, and it taught me a ton of confidence, and it was so great, but she could see that I liked that, and so she was very passionate about helping us kids grow and develop and be involved in other things. She loved her family. She was very close to her parents, her siblings, always there helping them if they had health issues. She helped. We were in a homeschool group at the time, and
Yeah.
some of the parents would teach classes. And so one year, they were like, well, we need to teach these kids a foreign language. And she knew that I wanted to be a nurse. And so she was like, if you're going to go into the medical field, you need Latin because all those words have Latin roots. So she learned Latin herself and taught and led a whole Latin class for a couple of years. She did Latin 1 and 2. And I mean, so smart. She was so smart and creative and just, she had such a servant's heart and she was funny. She was very funny. So those are a couple highlights of her.
Oh, I love that she was so creative about allowing each of her kids to become the people God had created them to be, to just develop in whatever way was at the forefront of their mind at that moment. That's so cool.
She just really loved to promote health in a lot of different areas, and her family was just always at the forefront. Our happiness and safety and well-being and growth were always top of mind for her.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'd like to go to the day when you did receive this heartbreaking news. And I would like for you to include all the ways that God met you and provided for you, really in very tender, special ways that day.
Oh, so The story of that day is it's really cool in a weird way. Like, it's weird for me to say it cool, but some of the details of that day, I will never not believe that there is a God because he just cares about so many details and, like, little intricate things. In what I share in this it's in this one day, this could not have happened by chance. So, I was working at the summer camp, and I was the wrangler because I loved horses. And it was my job to take all the campers out on trail rides. And that night, I had a scheduled night ride, and the campers loved this. So we would start after dinner. We would start when the sun was going down and go on a ride. And I don't know what it was, but they loved riding in the night. And so I was just sitting around waiting for the sun to go down, and there was a storm that was rolling in. This is the only time that happened that whole summer where one of my rides was I had to hold off because I saw this storm coming in. And of course, we don't want to go up any higher in elevation when there's lightning and all that. So I was talking to the director and he was like, just hold off. Let's just delay it by like half hour, 45 minutes. Okay. So I was just sitting there waiting for the storm to blow by, and that's when my dad called me. And if there was no storm, I would have been up in the mountains and wherever. I would not have gotten that call. Everything would have been delayed. I would have had to have all these horses. I had all these horses I had to take care of. I would have had to unsaddle them and take care of them and take care of the campers. But instead, I was sitting there just waiting and resting right before I got the message. And so that's the first thing where it was like a weird circumstances just lined up. He was in control of the
Yeah.
time where I was. The second thing is, and this is even bigger, is there was a fellow camp staff member who had gotten hurt like a week before. And he had gotten so hurt that he couldn't finish out the summer. But his job was really important. So they were scrambling and trying to find somebody to replace him. And like I said, I have three brothers. And so I called one of my brothers up and I was like, hey, Nathan, do you want to come out here and finish the summer with me? And I was like, you would love it out here. And so he was like, "All right, yeah." He wasn't doing anything. So the day that my mom died was the day that he flew out to Montana. He flew out, he landed, we brought him to camp, and he hadn't even unpacked his bag when I got the phone call, and he was there so that I would not have to get that phone call by myself. And we were there together. We cried together. We received the news together. Like, he was sitting right next to me when my dad called me. And God just made sure that I had family there. I was in an incredibly supportive environment, anyways, with all my fellow coworkers, but there's nothing like having family right there. And it was just cool to look back on that and see how God knew what was coming and he arranged things.
He had you.
Yeah.
Yes. That boy, that chokes me up. I love how tender and compassionate the Lord is because even though you had a supportive environment, nobody understands the loss of a mom except another sibling in your same family. So
Mhm.
I love that Nathan was there with you and y'all got to grieve together. I just can imagine how difficult it would have been to travel home by
Oh,
yourself. I love how the Lord cared for you in that place.
yeah.
I know that the Lord provided for you in a particular way during that first year, and then things got harder. But tell me about the first year. Share just how the Lord met you, what that was like as you transitioned through this time of loss, and how did God provide for you then?
Yeah. God specifically worked through the people in our lives. That first year, even though a lot of things really stung, like first Christmas, her first birthday, my first birthday, all the firsts really are, you're like bracing for them and they did really hurt. But we had such support in our friends, in our family, in our church, constantly checking in on us, making sure we were okay. I don't know how long, I forget how long the meals were coming and just people were very close. She died on July 23rd. So I returned back home in July, and so I was home July and most of August, and then I went back to nursing school. And again, such a supportive community, and I chose to go to a Christian school. And again, God in the details, I'm really thankful that when I could go back to school and tell my professors, the first thing they did was, "We need to pray for you. How can we support you?" It's just like speaking the same language of
Mhm.
they they just knew you need extra prayer support. How can we come alongside you? My classmates, they were fantastic. I was so held up and supported by everyone in different areas of my life. The first year was really hard, but I also had a ton of support in my network.
I'm
That was
curious. I think it's so impactful for us to hear how somebody with a loss was supported by other people because all of us have friends who have lost someone they love or are grieving a loss of a different kind. So you've described some of them, but what were the things that people did with you for you that
mm.
helped you during that time?
Well, sometimes it's just the smallest thing. So sometimes people would just stop over with flowers. For a while, our house had tons of flowers, and flowers just are they're so beautiful and just brighten up any house. And so even the act of stopping and dropping off some flowers is so kind. I remember we had a ton of cards that came from all over, people who couldn't be at her funeral or people who could, just sharing memories. I know some people, they're not sure what to say or anything, like, share a memory that you have. That's my favorite thing still to this day. I love hearing people's memories of my mom or things she would say. Share a memory that you have with them. And then prayer. I mean, prayer is so powerful. And even texting, sometimes God will drop somebody in my mind, in my memory, and I'll just text them really fast. And just that thing, because I've been on the receiving end of that, just knowing that somebody is thinking about you, somebody is bringing you before the throne, somebody is praying on your behalf is so comforting and so encouraging. And it just makes you feel like you're not alone and you're not being forgotten and people aren't just going on with their day-to-day lives. So,
Right. Yeah,
yeah.
that's huge. I know that's one of the biggest things is that even though you don't know what to say, if you can just tell someone, I'm so sorry. And even being a listening ear for you to share some of your favorite memories of your mom, I know
Yeah.
it's helpful. Okay. I know that after that first year, there are so many layers of loss that accumulate that it can just pop up and surprise you in the most obscure moments. And so, as you went through the next 2 years, 2 or 3 years, what were the losses that surprised you? And then, what was happening in your heart as you were walking in these deeper layers of loss?
I think things hit me when I moved back home after nursing school. So I did end up graduating successfully again by the help of a lot of people. And so I moved back home and I lived with my dad. And it really surprised me just being back in my home. You expect to hear her walking through the door and you expect to hear the garage open and her driving the car in the garage, and you expect when the door opens to hear her voice. There's all these little things that your brain is expecting, and you have to adjust and get used to the new normal. That really surprised me. Those little things were pain points and how they kept hitting over and how that built up and caused a lot of pain and how that pain then turned into some pretty intense anger. I've never been like a super angry person, but I definitely went through, I would say, about a 3-year period of being so angry at God. I was angry at my dad for a time because he started dating what I thought was too short after my mom died.
Yeah.
I'm just angry at everything that I had been handed, and so I was not expecting to be that angry for that long.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
yeah.
so how did that anger play out? And then what were the things that chipped away at that anger to rescue you?
Yeah, so the anger, I just turned my back on God. I don't believe that he caused her to die, but he sure didn't stop it.
Yeah.
And I do believe he could have stopped it. Where I was in my maturity and in my faith was I don't think I would ever have told you this verbally, but my actions were if I follow all the rules and I live by all the rules that I'm supposed to, my life is going to turn out great. And I would have never told you that, but looking back, that's how I reacted. God, I followed all your rules and you did this.
Yeah.
You let this happen. And so I decided to just have nothing to do with God for 3 years. I stopped going to church. I stopped reading my Bible or having any kind of relationship with him. I started doing travel nursing. And so I moved out to California. I started associating with people who were not Christians and who partied on the weekends. And so then I started partying on the weekends and alcohol, just this cycle of meaningless direction of just going out and partying and then having to recover and go to work. I was really hurting, but that was a way to just numb what I was feeling and
Sure.
to show God. I was like, I'll show you. So yeah, so that lasted for about 3 years. And the things that just started chipping away at that was just having really loyal friends who loved me. They wouldn't shove stuff down my throat. They wouldn't shove Bible verses or be like, you really shouldn't be doing that. They would just be walking alongside of me and just when the time was right, reminding me of truth. Like, I remember I had one friend, we were going on a hike, and I remember telling her just how mad I was that I'm I couldn't feel God, like, towards the end of when I was walking away from him, the pages on the Bible were just like reading a normal book, and I was like, "I can't hear him anymore, I can't feel him," and she just said, "Lauren, be careful leaning on your emotions, feelings so much. That's not all the time what faith is. You can't believe sometimes what you feel. You have to believe the truth of what you know
Yeah.
and continue." And so that just always stuck with me.
That's powerful. Glad you had
Yeah.
a friend speak that to you with love.
Yeah, and it was good. I never felt judged by my friends, which was really important because I think that would have made me dig my heels in even harder. But
They're
you know,
yeah, they were walking alongside you. They were letting you grieve. They were just being your friend as you were hurting.
yeah, and they trusted I think looking back, I think they trusted me to God and they were
Yeah.
listening for their instructions from God. I think they were being very open to the Holy Spirit and just being like, "How do you want me to minister to her?" I know I had friends praying for me,
Mm.
and that was really cool looking back to see. And ultimately, I did have the Holy Spirit in me.
Sure.
No matter how far I walk away from him, I still deep down knew the truth. I remember there was one day I was just sitting on my apartment floor and I was just like, my life hasn't gotten any better since I've walked away from God. Like I've tried to show him and I've tried to call the shots on my own and show him that I can live a better life apart from him. And I realized that I had more anger than I've ever had, more anxiety, and I didn't have a direction. I mean, partying and getting hungover and recovering from that, there's no direction in that, and there's no purpose and meaning and health in that.
Right.
I do think that was part of the Holy Spirit just giving me that insight and giving me that helping me step back and look at my life from an overview of being like, "Are you done yet?" Because
I'm here. I'm waiting. I love this about the Lord that He so tenderly pursues our hearts in a thousand different ways that we don't even see or notice. But He was softening your heart. He was opening your eyes to see the purposelessness there and reminding you that He's with you. He loves you. He's waiting for you. And He's not just sitting back mindlessly twiddling His thumbs waiting for you. He's pursuing you actively and answering your friends' prayers and sending them to you with words of wisdom, so many ways. And he protected you too. I know you've mentioned that before. He protected you from a lot of the consequences of some of your choices.
yeah, no, he totally did. I mean, there could have been a lot of horrible consequences that could have taken my life in a really different and dark direction, and he was still there
Mhm.
protecting me, and yeah.
It's so beautiful. So, what did you learn looking back? What do you know now about God's character that you didn't know then?
Yeah. Well, I definitely think it it strengthened my relationship with him. If you have any deep relationship, I think a lot of times faces conflict. I know, like, the easiest to compare it with is me and my husband. When we have conflict or a huge fight and we work through it, there's just a deeper foundation of trust then after that, and after we heal things and move on, and so I feel like I learned that he can handle my unfiltered thoughts, because I think growing up, I I couldn't say anything. I had to say the right things to him, and there was many times I was journaling and praying, and I would call him every name in the book, and at first I was like, "Hmm, is he gonna is there gonna be, like, lightning?" But no, he already knows it, but there's something really cool about just honestly telling him unfiltered what you're really thinking, and knowing that he can handle that, and that he's not afraid of that, and he won't condemn you for that. That built, like, a layer of trust with
Yeah.
me and him. And then I just saw how he doesn't force anything on me. He didn't force me to come back when he wanted me to come back. He let me throw my whole tantrum and do what I wanted, and again, there was layers of protection there, and looking back, I could see his hand protecting me in a lot of areas, but he still just let me get it out of my system, and he wasn't like, "You have to come back, and that's not good for you." So he doesn't force me to do certain things.
I love that about the Lord. He's just so patient with us. And one of the things you mentioned too, I think is key to healing. We have to be able to tell the Lord the truth about all of our feelings. We have to pour it out so that we make space to hear his, to receive his love and to hear his words.
Yes, it is so important to
Yeah.
just get all out, and I love journaling, and so journaled a lot through that grieving process, and just
Yeah.
it's so important to get things out, or else you're keeping them in, and your body knows it will show up at some point.
Your body keeps score. Yeah, it'll come out for sure. You deal with your stuff or it deals with you. I really am curious because when you have lost anything suddenly, lost someone you loved suddenly, how do you trust God with your loved ones? How do you keep your heart open to love and trusting the Lord rather than being hyper vigilant and trying to control everybody and everything all the time?
That is hard. It's hard. It's gonna be a lifelong thing. Learning how to do that. And I want to make it more second nature than it is right now. So, especially with my husband, I have seasons or times of a lot of anxiety. Even happened this week. He has a job out of town, and he does tile, and so he has a big tile trailer that he pulls behind him, and the tires on there are not great, and they've gone flat, and he has to go on the interstate, and so I'm thinking, like, you're going, like, 80, 90 miles an hour with a trailer, and just my mind just starts, like, spiraling, and so it's really hard tapping into resources and tools that he provides here on Earth, like therapists, trusted friends. A lot of times when I'm feeling anxious, I'll put on worship music and surround myself with truth, and then just being really diligent to have time with the Lord every day. And again, just being honest with him. This is what I'm scared of. And sometimes just the fact of writing it out or saying it, then it helps my brain be like, okay, that probably won't happen. But I remember the other day I was like, I'm really scared that my husband's gonna die. My brain was like, okay, that probably won't happen, but if it does, you are going to be okay,
Yeah.
because God was there for you before, and he will be there for you again. And you know him more intimately. You've seen how he's moved, and you can trust him. And so it didn't take the fear completely away, but it was something that I could focus on and just relax a little bit more in and be like, it's okay to have this fear. And I understand why I do, but there's something greater going on, and there's somebody more powerful who is holding me that
Yes.
will walk me through this if it should happen again.
Right. So important to be able to talk that out, to ask yourself, what are you so afraid of? Say it out loud and then look to the Lord. God will be with me no matter what. I hear stories about people who lost loved ones, and their response was, God is still on his throne. I know it's going to be hard, but I know God is still on his throne and God will be with me. in this, just as he was in the past. Thanks so much for talking that out with us. I know it's a process. I know you have to arrest your spiraling thoughts if they are heading down into a tunnel of fear. Everybody does.
Yeah.
And so I know for you, it's a big trigger, and I appreciate what you've shared. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, let's get to this huge, wonderful ministry that you have. I love the full circle of your redemptive story. God has brought healing to your heart in so many creative ways. One of them is launching this ministry called Moe Mountains to honor your mom. So tell us about this ministry and what you hope women experience through the backpacking trips.
Yeah. So last year, we're coming up on a year here. I launched my business and it's called Moe Mountains in honor of my mom. So I think I mentioned her name is Maureen and her nickname was Mo. But I spent a big chunk of time healing in God's creation and his nature, in his mountains. And that has just been such a healing place for me, a time where I've worked out my anger, a time where I've just been able to cry freely, a time where I've just been able to rest and be restored so deeply. There's just something so healing about his creation. I always knew, like, I love nursing. I don't know that I'll ever get out of it, but I always knew there was something else, some other purpose that he had for me. And so I hired a business coach last year, and she's a wonderful Christian woman. And I didn't even have a business, but I was like, Gretchen, there's something in there. Help me get it out. So through a lot of prayer and just the Bible says there is wisdom in many counselors. I surrounded myself with Christian women and we came up with taking women on backpacking trips. I love being outside. I know how to backpack and I love getting women together. And so it was just a combination of a lot of things that I love and that I feel like God has gifted me in. And so we go Thursday to Sunday. I'm very passionate about equipping them well before, because I take a lot of first time backpackers. And so we have a fitness program and a prep course, and I outfit everybody. So if you don't have gear, I can give you everything that you need. And the first year was so incredible. I just pinched myself over and it was like, I can't believe I get to do this. I can't believe this is my
Wow.
assignment that God's given me.
That's amazing. Are there trips that people can sign up for now, and how do they do that?
Yeah, so we are booking spots now. We're taking 5 trips and 1.5 is already sold out. So we still got a good handful. But if you go to my website, it's momountains.com and Mo is MOE. You'll see on there, you just keep scrolling down and I have a section that says backpacking trips for 2024. Click that and you will see all the places that we're going, all incredible places. One's to Yellowstone too, which is the big, that one's almost sold out. But you can see the dates and I categorize them by like easy, moderate, challenging. I have one trip, this was by special request. I have one trip specifically for women who are 50 plus. So there's just all different kinds of trips and I can't wait. I can't wait for this summer.
I loved it. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us today, Lauren. Wow. I hope I get to meet you in person and be on one of these trips.
Oh, that would be so fun. I want to bring the women into the mountains and let God speak to them how they need. Yeah. So some women just need community. They need to be together with other women. Some need to just rest. And so we bring hammocks and some just need to sleep in the hammock all day. But some women brought fishing poles and they wanted to fish. And so right now, I just want to be the one to facilitate and put together and guide these trips. And then when I get them to camp, just sit back and let God do his thing and
Mm.
work on each woman how they're needing.
I think that's just the perfect way to do it.
Yeah.
Lauren, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. This was so beautiful and significant. It was really a blessing to hear from you today.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me, Kelly, and just letting me share my story. And I hope it at least helps at least one person. That'll be really encouraging.
Well, it was already encouraging to me. So there's your line. And I know it'll be more than that.
Yeah.
If you were encouraged in your faith today, it'd be great if you'd help get the word out by subscribing, sharing with a friend, or leaving a review. I'd love to hear from you. You can reach out through my website, kellyhall.org, and pick up some free resources while you're there. Thanks for listening to the Unshakable Hope Podcast.